stand under it at the right hour, and you can almost believe it grew here. Downtown Miami, the north edge, where 4 levels of highway fold over each other in concrete. Ramps climb, cross, and come down again. Cars pass overhead with a sound like weather. Underneath, in the permanent shade of the piers, there is parking, and the kind of silence that collects where a road has decided nothing else belongs. It covers almost 30 square blocks. And it has the great talent of everything poured in concrete. It looks like it was always simply there, like the land offered itself up for exactly this, like no one at any point had to choose. Keep that word in mind, choose, because 30 blocks is a strange amount of nothing to find in the middle of a city. And under this interchange, before the ramps, there was not nothing. There was a place with a name, Overtown, the center of Black Miami, around 40,000 people. It had so many nightclubs and music rooms that people gave it a name that has outlived the neighborhood itself, the Harlem of the South. You can drive across it now in about 40 seconds and never know the difference. That is not an accident of paving. That is the whole story. To understand what the road took, you have to see what was standing. Miami is a young city. It only incorporated in 1896, and it was built in large part by black laborers who laid the tracks for the Florida East Coast Railway and raised the buildings downtown. When the work was done, the city settled them on the far side of those tracks, in a district it labeled on its own maps, Colored Town. Segregation drew the line. The people on the wrong side of it did what people do. They built a city of their own. By the 1940s and 50s, Overtown was not an edge. It was a downtown. Hundreds of black-owned businesses lined Northwest 2nd Avenue. There were doctors and lawyers and grocers and barbers, churches and hotels, and at the heart of it, a strip of nightclubs and theaters bright enough to earn a nickname of its own, the Little Broadway of the South. The Lyric Theater anchored it, and here is the detail that tells you what kind of place this was. The great performers of the age played the white hotels on Miami Beach, Count Basie, Ella Fitzgerald, Nat King Cole. And then, at the end of the night, they could not sleep where they had just performed. The beach would not house them, so they came back over the water to Overtown. They stayed here. They played the after-hours rooms here until the sky went gray. The same law that shut the door on the beach made this neighborhood the place where the music actually lived. I want you to hold that picture, because the version of this story that survived does not include it. In the version that survived, this was a slum, a problem, a blank space waiting for something better. It was not a blank space. It was full. And there were men downtown who had wanted it emptied for a very long time. Since the 1930s, Miami's business and civic leaders had looked north and west from the center of downtown and seen the same thing, a district in the way. Downtown wanted room to grow, and Overtown was where the growth would have to go. They said parts of it out loud. Public housing built miles to the northwest, Liberty Square, was expected, in the planner's own thinking, to siphon off Overtown's population. The want was old. It just needed an instrument. In 1956, the instrument arrived. That was the year Congress created the Interstate Highway System, the largest public works project in American history, a promise to lay a continuous ribbon of high-speed road across the whole country. For a city, a new interstate was not a threat. It was a prize. It meant federal money, it meant connection, it meant the future arriving on schedule. And here is what everyone understood about an interstate, then and now. It goes where the engineers say it goes, i.e., it follows the terrain and the traffic counts and the cost tables. A highway is a machine for moving cars, and a machine does not have opinions about neighborhoods. If the line on the map runs through your street, that is not personal. That is just the route. That is just where the numbers pointed. That is the story Miami told about I-95 for decades. The road came through. The road, regrettably, ran where highways run. Progress has a path, and the path came here. Watch how reasonable it sounds. Watch how completely it removes anyone's hand from the wheel. The state agency in charge was the Florida State Road Department. It brought in outside consultants, the firm of Wilbur Smith and Associates, the kind of people you hire precisely so the answer will look like arithmetic instead of preference. The road department's own chairman, Wilbur E. Jones, was a Miami man, close to the same downtown circle that had wanted the room for 30 years. A local newspaper described the coming highway plainly as a slum clearance program. Not a rumor, not a leak. That was the pitch in print. So the machine came to Miami, and the machine, everyone agreed, would simply find its path. Keep that agreement in mind because it is the thing the record is about to break. In February of 1957, the state held a public hearing on the downtown expressway. People came, and the room, by the account that survives, was angry. A former mayor of Miami named Abe Aronovitz stood up and called the elevated highway what he saw: a monstrosity straddling the city of Miami. He was so alarmed he wired the governor, Leroy Collins, directly and told him that of 500 citizens at that hearing, only 10 had spoken in favor of it. 500 against, 10 for. He went to see the governor in person. The record closes that meeting in 3 flat words: to no avail. There was even a lone, patient campaigner, Elizabeth Vierick, a white housing reformer who fought the expressway for the better part of a decade through a little newsletter she published herself. She had heard about another city that stopped its highway and made the planners start over. "Hasn't anyone heard of San Francisco?" she wrote, "where the road program was stopped and replanned because an alert citizenry demanded it? So the road was fought. Hold on to that. It could be fought. Because in Miami, some people were allowed in the room. Now look at who was not. There was no public hearing held inside Overtown. None. The neighborhood with 40,000 people in it, the one the road was about to erase, was never given the meeting. The objections on the record are about an elevated eyesore and downtown property values. The people whose actual homes were on the line were not asked, were not warned in any room that counted, were simply not there. That absence is the loudest thing in the whole file, and it is loud precisely because it is empty. And the men in charge understood the human cost well enough to wave it off. Chairman Jones allowed that relocating the displaced deserved serious study. Then he added that it was not the road department's responsibility, someone else's problem, someone, somewhere, later. One leading Miami planner had put the goal in words years before, words that survive and do not soften on the page. The aim was a complete slum clearance, effectively removing every Negro family from the present city limits. Read that again, slowly. That is not an engineer describing a traffic solution. That is a man describing a neighborhood he intends to make disappear. And here is the part that should unsettle you most, because it is the most human. The people of Overtown could see it coming, and even they were told there was nothing to be done. The Greater Miami Urban League, an organization that existed to defend black interests, issued a statement calling the expressway necessary for the continued progress of our city. The black newspaper, the Miami Times, wrote to its own readers, "With the expansion and progress of a city, there is little you can do about it." A few years later, on a bond issue, "We are living in a progressive state. We cannot afford to take a backward step. Listen to the word that keeps returning: progress, progress, a backward step." That is the thing that beat Overtown. Not only the bulldozer, a word so large that even the people about to lose everything felt they were not allowed to stand against it. So far, this is a hard story, but not a strange one. A highway came through a black neighborhood in the segregated South, and the people who lived there had no power to stop it. That happened in city after city. If that were all, it would be a tragedy. And tragedies, at least, feel like weather. They feel like something that fell. But there is a document that changes the shape of this one. And to see it, you have to go back to before the federal money, before the state took over, to 1955, when the road was still being drawn by Miami's own city planners. Because the city had already drawn it, Miami's planners had a route for the downtown expressway, and it was not through Overtown. Their line ran along an abandoned railroad corridor, through warehouse and low-value industrial land. The empty ground, the ground where a highway takes almost no one's home. And they wrote down why. In their own words, those locations had been chosen in order to preserve and help protect existing residential neighborhoods. Read that again. To protect existing residential neighborhoods. Before the interstate money arrived, the plan on the table was built to spare people's homes, all of them, including Overtown. Then, a year later, Congress created the interstate system, and with the federal money, the state took the pen. The Florida State Road Department and its consultants looked at the city's careful line along the old rail bed, and they rejected it. The road moved several blocks west, off the warehouses, onto Overtown, and the reason went into the record too. The rail corridor route was set aside, the highway planners wrote, to provide ample room for the future expansion of the central business district in a westerly direction. There it is. The whole case in 2 lines from 2 plans. The first drew the road away from homes on purpose and said so. The second set that route aside and pushed the highway onto the most crowded black neighborhood in the city on purpose and said so too. Not for engineering, not for traffic, not for terrain, for room. Room for downtown to grow the way downtown had wanted to grow since the 1930s. Now go back and look at everything you just heard, because it all means something different now. The road did not fall on Overtown like weather. It was aimed. There was a version where those homes stood, and it existed on paper in a Miami office, and someone with the authority to do it reached over and moved the line. The interstate that looks today like it was always simply there, like the land offered itself up, was, at the decisive moment, a choice made twice. Once to spare the neighborhood, and once to sacrifice it. That is the turn, not a new fact. The same facts relit every reasonable sounding thing, the machine that goes where the numbers point, the regrettable path of progress. The highway that ran where highways run was a story laid over a decision, like concrete over ground, and the decision had a date and an author and a sentence explaining itself. By 1968, the downtown expressway was finished. The 4-level interchange alone, those 30 blocks of shade we started under, erased the housing of about 10,000 people. Add the urban renewal that came with it, and across the whole era, Overtown fell from roughly 50,000 residents to just over 10,000. Most of the displaced were pushed miles north, into and beyond a district called Liberty City. The Little Broadway of the South did not decline. It was subtracted. And here is the fact that closes the door on calling it fate. Miami finished its expressway system or had it under construction by around 1965. That was just before the first weak federal rules on interstate routing. The ones requiring some community input, some help for the people relocated, began to take hold. Miami's road builders never had to meet them. The system beat the reforms by a few years. Whether by luck or by pace, the road that reshaped Black Miami was poured in the last window when it could be done with no hearing in the neighborhood at all. And remember San Francisco, the city Elizabeth Vierick kept pointing at. There, an alert citizenry did stop a freeway and force a rethink. The difference between the two cities was not fate, and it was not physics. It was who was allowed in the room, and whether anyone in the room had the standing to say no. In Miami, the people with the most to lose were kept off the record entirely, and so the road went exactly where the oldest want in the city had always wanted it. Stay with the harder question, the one that follows you home, not why the road went there. We know why. The question is how a choice this large got made so cleanly. A hearing for the city, none for the neighborhood. And then how, for decades afterward, the story that survived was the smooth one. The road came through. Progress has a path. That first map, the one that spared the homes, mostly stayed out of the frame. The proof that anyone chose was quietly left off the tour. That is the second loss, and it is the one that should reach you. First, the place, then the record of the choice. The people of Overtown lost their neighborhood in concrete, and then lost for a long time even the acknowledgement that it had been done to them, rather than simply befallen them. Go back and stand under it. The 4 levels, the ramps folding over each other, the permanent shade, the cars passing overhead like weather. 30 square blocks of engineered nothing in the middle of a city. It still looks like it was always there. That is the talent of concrete. It does not remember. It cannot testify. It holds the shape of a decision and shows you only a surface. But there were 2 maps. There was a line that spared the homes and a line that was drawn through them. And the second one is the one you can drive on. The first one exists too. It is just harder to find because we paved the other over it and called the result progress. That is the word to be careful of. Progress is the name we pour over a choice so that later we can walk across it and feel nothing and tell ourselves the ground was always empty. So here is what I would keep driving away from this one. Somewhere in the world you remember a main street, a downtown, a whole neighborhood that got renewed or bypassed or cleared for something better. Somebody once told you it was inevitable, that it was nobody's fault, that the world simply changed. Maybe it did, or maybe there was a first map, and maybe someone moved the line and then poured enough concrete over it that you would never think to ask.